Let's jump in. Thanks for joining us today in our session. It's called Dynamic Duo, the benefits of linking your strategic plan and your brand strategy. And we designed this session because if we've learned anything in the past couple of years, it's that a worthy mission is no longer enough to propel your organization or your school forward. We know that a bold and actionable strategic plan and a brand that invites stakeholders in is absolutely essential to your success. So something that we know is that very few organizations actually integrate their strategic plan and their brand work together, or their brand strategies together. It's often done in a very siloed manner, and it really misses huge opportunities to elevate an organization in really important ways. So as I said, we designed this session because A, we want to convince you why this matters, why integrating strategic plan and brand together is so essential. And B, we want to leave you with some really practical ways that you can align your strategic plan and your brand, whether you've already done one and not the other, whether you're embarking on one and you've already completed the other, or whether you're embarking on them together. Our goal is to help you see what the points of alignment are so that you can do that in your work. My name is Romayne Levee. I'm a partner and the Director of Education Strategy at Mission Minded, and my role here is to oversee all of the strategic consulting that we do with schools, colleges, universities, and educational foundations. I am actually a founder of an independent school in Los Angeles called Vistamar School, and I was the founding board chair of that school and sat on the board of trustees for a dozen years. I also am a trustee at a liberal arts college in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Dr. Carrie Tancraitor. I am a senior strategic planner at Mission Minded, and my role is to support our strategic planning processes and engagement. And my background is in nonprofit capacity building and applied research.
And for those of you not familiar with Mission Minded, or maybe coming to a webinar for the first time, we are a strategy and creative firm. We help good causes, including nonprofits and independent schools, have greater impact. And we believe that organizations that make our world a better place need greater intention and bolder thinking than ever before. So every day we work with organizations all over the country, like We Don't Waste, the REI Cooperative Fund, the Bay Area Discovery Museum. You're going to see a couple of those case studies today. And schools like Stern School, the Stanford Humanities Center, and Wesleyan University, to help them uncover the big, bold ideas that are going to catapult them to their next version of greatness and invite more people to support their work. So I'm going to kick off our agenda today by discussing the relationship between and the benefits of strategic plan and brand integration. Carrie's then going to highlight a couple of points of intersection or connection between strategic plans and brands. And then we're going to use 3 case studies because we want to show you specifically how to make the connections through some other case studies of organizations that we've worked with. So in those case studies, we'll demonstrate those points of connections. And then we're going to bring it all together through a couple of exercises where you actually get to tinker around with a couple of the demonstrated methodologies and connections that we've made. We're going to show you a final product of a communication that was created by a school that did integrated strategic planning and brand strategy. So you can see how it all comes together in real life. And then, as I said, we're going to leave time at the end for any questions or reflections that you have. So Carrie and I will be in the chat as long as folks are around and asking us questions. All right, so the question on everyone's mind, I'm hoping, is this one: why integrate your strategic plan and your brand? Well, in our experience working with hundreds of purpose-driven organizations all over the country, we see that brands and strategic plans are not well aligned. And the reason, as I mentioned earlier, is a lot of siloing happens. Board and school leadership tend to be the groups of people who do strategic planning. And marketing and communications leadership tend to be the group who take responsibility for brand. So what do you think the result is when that work is done in disconnected ways and with different bodies of people? you have different decisions that are being made about your plan and about your brand, and therefore a set of very mixed signals that are being sent and communicated to your community. There's a study that was done among over 300 nonprofit leaders, and only about a third said that they had any confidence in understanding the ways that their strategic plans and their brands were connected. Just think about that for a minute. Only a third of organizations are combining that work. And Mission Minded, it's in our name, we're on a mission to change that. We really think that it's important for organizations to seize the power of the connections between those two important bodies of work. So on a positive note, though, those people that said that they did understand the connections and their brands and their strategic plans were well integrated, they said they were infinitely more prepared to manage the operational disruption that was caused by the pandemic in 2020 and 21. So when operations were halted, when programs were paused, when services were discontinued, whatever it was that the business or the work that those organizations were doing, when school was canceled, those leaders felt like they had all the tools that they needed right at their fingertips to make decisions about how to proceed and how to communicate about those decisions really clearly. On the flip side, the people who said that their plans and brand strategies were not connected felt like their decision-making and their communications were much more haphazard because they didn't have clear direction. Here's a quote that just to share with you. This is Catherine Din. She's a head of school at a school that we worked with recently called Marin Country Day School. And we did an integrated strategic planning and branding initiative with their school last year. And here's what she said about it. Having the strategic plan and brand developed concurrently and integrated has given her a very clear focus. Not only are the priorities for the school laid out clearly for the next few years, but also she knows the most effective and efficient way to engage the community on that journey. So that's one of our clients' testimony. You're actually going to see a video from MCDS. That's the bringing it all together piece that you'll see at the end. All right, so here's the question that is often asked to us here at Mission Minded, because we do strategic planning and we do brand. A lot of people say, which comes first, the strategic plan or the brand? Well, there's actually a couple of different schools of thought about which should come first, and we're going to tell you about both of them. One school of thought is that strategic planning comes first and it drives brand. Mission Minded actually believed in this wisdom for many years, and we used it sort of as our guiding principle. Do one, figure out what your main organizational priorities are, and then come back and do your brand a little bit later. That's how we operated for many years. So essentially what you're saying in that case is the strategic plan is where you're going and the brand is the reputation you need to get there. So you do that thinking about where you're going first, and then after, as an afterthought, maybe you do the reputational piece. The other school of thought is that brand is more everlasting. It's the core identity of your organization, and it sets the tone for shaping your multi-year strategies. So with this school of thought, brand strategy actually would come before or would be upstream of strategic planning. So in this case, the brand is the core identity of your organization. It's who you are. It's how you act. It's what you do. And then the strategic plan is a little bit more of a shorter term body of work. It's where you're moving or where you're moving to next. And it's the strategies that you need to get there. I see there's a hand raised in the participants. And so I just want to see if there's a question in the chat that we need to answer right now. Frida or Carrie, is there anything that you're seeing that I need to address before I keep moving on?
No, I think if you want to put your question in the chat, that would be great. And then we can respond.
Yeah, thank you. If in case you joined late, we're just keeping this chat open, and Carrie and Frida are monitoring so that we can respond to your questions in real time. And by the way, if it's anything that rises to the surface, we think, hey, everyone needs to hear this answer, we'll definitely flag it and talk about it out loud. So thanks for continuing to keep your questions going. All right, so our school of thought at Mission Minded is your strategic plan and your brand should be linked. No matter how you do it, no matter what order you do them in a perfect world, you develop them together. But if you can't, because your plan is already done and now you're doing brand, or your brand is already done and now you're embarking on a strategic planning work, they should inform each other. So like I said, best case, you do them together, but if one before the other, that one is on the table, one is absolutely on your minds as you're developing the other, because there's 100 ways that they're going to enrich each other and make each other stronger. Here's why. Here's the reasons why you want them integrated, and I'll give you a few examples. The reason to integrate them is because when you have a strategic plan and your brand strategy integrated, they combine to make up an incredibly powerful playbook that everybody in your organization, from board, leadership, staff, volunteers, can use in everyday decision making. So if they aren't connected, if they're disconnected, your decision making is going to be disconnected. Here's a couple of examples. You'll use your strategic plan and your brand strategy when vetting new opportunities for your organization. So for example, does that opportunity get you closer to your vision? And does it align with your brand values? Another way is you'll use your strategic plan and your brand strategy when you're planning communications or when you're developing events for your stakeholders. You're going to wonder, or you're going to ask yourselves, are they in service to your strategic priorities from your plan? Are they designed with your brand experience in mind? You'll use your strategic plan and your brand strategy when you're hiring and onboarding new employees, asking yourselves, do their skills help you implement your strategic priorities? And are they aligned with your brand values? And finally, you'll use your strategic plan and your brand strategy when managing during times of crisis. So as I mentioned, with a third of the folks in that study that was done during the pandemic, they said that their decision-making was infinitely more clear-cut as a result. So those are all of the ways, or some of the major ways, that in your day-to-day work in your organization that you would be referencing both your strategic plan and your brand strategies. I want to acknowledge I just threw a bunch of jargon at you: vision, brand values, strategic priorities, brand experience. And so Carrie's going to unpack a little bit of that before we start talking about the actual connections between those two elements.
Yeah, great, Romayne, thanks. Let's talk a little bit about the elements of your strategic plan and your brand strategy and define and decode some of those jargon terms. So a strategic plan will typically begin with a vision and a mission statement. And we think about the vision as the articulation of the world your organization hopes to bring about. What does the world look like when you win? And then your mission is the work that you do every day to get closer to your vision. Strategic plan will also have a set of overarching strategic commitments, usually 4 or 5, and they are the structure of the plan. So some people call them pillars, others might call them goals. We like to call them commitments because we know an organization could fail to meet their goals, but they won't fail to live up to their commitments. And then the strategic priorities, those are really the work of the strategic plan. They're the initiatives that you take in order to make good on your commitments. We think somewhere in the range of 12 to 16 is the right number of priorities. Let's talk about brand strategy. So your brand positioning is the single-minded idea that distinguishes you from others in the field. The brand experience is the emotion you hope your stakeholders will feel when they engage with your organization. The brand personality is how you show up every day. We like to say, if your organization was a person, which attributes would you use to describe them? And then your brand signals are all of the external tools, your messages, your visual identity, other ways that you bring your brand to life. And then there are your organizational values, and they go here because the values are the glue that bind your strategic plan and your brand strategy together. Your values are your guiding principles. Values are the principles upon which we make day-to-day decisions, according to the CEO of LinkedIn. And we like to think of values like a GPS, and they alert us when we go off course. And because values play such an important role in an organization's culture, they really are the glue that bind your strategic plan and your brand strategy together. So Romayne and I are going to share a couple of case studies just to show you what we mean. And each of our case studies is going to be represented using 5 different slides. This is the first one. You'll see the organization's vision statement and its brand positioning. Remember, the vision statement sits at the top of the strategic plan, and the brand positioning sits at the top of the brand strategy. And in the second slide, we're going to show you the organization's values, or again, the glue that binds the strategy and the brand together. And when you see the values in the case studies, notice that they aren't singular words, but rather active phrases. And we use active language because it makes your values so much more compelling and it invites people into your work. And then third, we'll share the strategic commitments the organization made in their strategic plan. And remember, strategic commitments, they set the structure of the plan. So they're often called pillars or goals. But again, we call them commitments because we know you will not fail to meet your commitments. And when you see the commitments in the case studies, just notice how closely related they are to the previous elements. So the vision, the brand position, the values. And then under each of the strategic commitments, you'll see a handful of strategic priorities. And the priorities are the to-do list to ensure that you fulfill those commitments. These really represent the work of the strategic plan. And then finally, we're going to share one of the most important brand signals, the belief message. And a compelling belief message follows this format. It gives an introduction to your organization, its brand, the work you do. It's often called an elevator pitch, but your belief message should make you stand out from others in the field and describe the basics of what you're trying to accomplish without going into too much detail. So every organization should have one belief message, and everyone should memorize it and be able to recite it. So for instance, at Mission Minded, we start every staff meeting with our belief message. So now that you have that structure, Romayne's going to walk you through our first case study.
Thanks, Carrie. All right, so the first case study is an organization called We Don't Waste, and they are one of the largest food recovery organizations in Colorado. And their mission is about helping feed people while working to protect the planet by keeping food out of the landfills. But despite their good work over the years, hunger and over pollution in their area is at an all-time high. So we worked with them to develop a strategic plan and integrated brand. And I want to just encourage you as we walk through this case study to drop anything in the chat that you might be noticing about the connections, or of course, any questions that you have. Keep those coming. All right, so this should look familiar. Carrie just showed you that we were going to teach this way through sharing a vision and a brand positioning first. So what you're about to see here is the result of many months of work. We don't want to oversimplify what went into starting with a deep phase of research with the organization, numerous ideation sessions with We Don't Waste and the mission-minded team and members of their extended staff and community. And we really partnered with them to articulate a vision for the future. And their vision is expanding their impact to ensure the health and sustainability of our communities and our planet. And it's expressed in this way. We envision a world where food goes to people, not landfills, and is accessible to all. So that might be a long way off. That's a North Star for them to strive for. And, but it felt bold and aspirational for their organization. And then because we developed an integrated brand positioning alongside that work, we developed a brand positioning that was really seeking to shift perceptions of We Don't Waste from what was at the time more of a logistics operation to the most reliable and committed partner and advocate rescuing and repurposing food to sustain people and the planet. So as Carrie said, the brand positioning sits at the top of the brand strategy and the vision sits at the top, and they are glued together by a set of organizational values, which were expressed this way. Food is a human right, champion innovation, foster inclusion, build community, and cultivate sustainability. And notice again how these are expressed as active phrases. They're not singular words like inclusivity or innovation or community, but they are foster inclusion, champion innovation, and build community. And members of those communities know what's being asked of them and what it is that they are all there to do together and to unite around when those are expressed that way. These are the strategic commitments, which you'll note are very closely aligned to their values. So all of them start with "we commit to," and then ensuring food is a human right, fostering inclusion, building connection, and cultivating sustainability, with a little bit more language on there that people understand how they're going to be doing each of those things. Your strategic commitments don't need to be aligned one-to-one with your values. This is a structure that really worked for We Don't Waste. In fact, they had 5 values and they chose to align 4 of them with their strategic commitments. But your strategic commitments should be aligned with something that is unique to your organization and essentially tell a story of what you care about. So I want to point out what you're not seeing here is a set of commitments that are falling into functional areas like program and facilities and finance and community engagement, but rather these are commitments about the things that they care deeply about, and it ends up being an organizing structure that they then use to develop their actual work and their priorities, which is what's on the next slide. So here are some of the selected priorities. This isn't the entire strategic plan, but just to give you an idea that under each of these commitments, you're going to have 3 to 5, as Carrie said. We think 12 to 15 or 16 is a good number. You don't want to over inundate or develop too many priorities that's not realistic for your organization to take on. But there are a couple things that we just want to call your attention to here. There's a commitment to foster inclusive communities by empowering stakeholders to be leaders of change. And you can see how this priority is really about listening to the community. It's a very powerful and aligned way to approach problem solving. So that's very on brand, and that's very aligned with their values and their mission. Similarly, they are committed to building connections through education and advocacy efforts. And so there's a priority in here that details one of the ways that We Don't Waste is going to fulfill that commitment. And you see they're committed to very much aligned with their values with collaboration and their collaborative partners. So you'll see that the work is an articulation of the ways that they're going to achieve the commitments in doing the things that they care about. The last piece of an expression we call a belief message. Carrie mentioned to you that every organization should have one belief message or elevator pitch, which is one of the many signals that you will send externally as part of your external brand. But the belief message for We Don't Waste is summarized in this very pithy way. At We Don't Waste, it's our fervent belief that food should go to people, not landfills. Every day, we rescue and redistribute food while also advocating for system-wide changes to end food insecurity and reduce food waste. Access to food is a human right. That's right out of one of their values. When we tackle the issues of food insecurity and waste together, we ensure the health and sustainability of our communities and our planet. So that is a brand signal that is absolutely connected to and an external expression of everything that you saw on the previous slides. All right, we're going to move into case study number 2 with Carrie.
Yeah. So the Bay Area Discovery Museum is a mission-driven museum. It's beloved for creating a world of wonder for children and families to explore. And the museum, like all member organizations, was hit hard by COVID, and they wanted a strategic plan to set the new normal. And again, feel free to use the chat function if you notice anything as I walk through this case study. And Mission-Minded's methodology really emphasizes, as Romayne was just saying, the actual impact the organization exists to bring about, the why the organization exists. We don't just focus on the operational aspects of achieving a mission. So through our process together, the Bay Area Discovery Museum didn't just hit the reset button. They really instead recognize this greater strategic imperative. They wanted to set a bold vision to address the inequities that limit access to educational enrichment in oppressed communities. And so we linked arms and we created this bold, inclusive vision that thought more broadly about the entire Bay Area population, not just this small subset of Discovery Museum patrons. And their vision was, we envision a world where every child grows and thrives through joyful play. And a brand position that really sought to shift perceptions of the Bay Area Discovery Museum from this exclusive place for affluent families to visit to an early childhood expert whose offerings are accessible and impactful to everyone in the entire community. And here you see their values. And you see these key ideas from the vision and the brand positioning are represented in these values. And don't the values just feel so much more compelling because they're active? If they were nouns, they would be joy, curiosity, belonging, people, community, which are lovely nouns, but they're just so much more engaging and exciting when we activate them. Cultivate curiosity, support our people, partner with community, foster belonging, lead with joy. And then here you see their organizational commitments or their big overarching goals that really powerfully guide them to be an inspiring partner in early childhood education. One that addresses the needs of families with young children, one that extends joyful play experiences into schools, one that builds child-centric community that really nurtures future generations. And again, here's how they're going to fulfill those commitments, these priorities. And these really grew from the overarching goal or that overarching commitment. So for instance, you'll recall that second commitment was about empowering adults that care for children. So a supporting priority could have very easily been develop parent programs. But when that priority is written in this way, to meaningfully and joyfully engage with adults when they visit the museum, you can see how that connects to their brand. And then their fourth commitment was about being a trusted and go-to partner in the community. And one of the ways that we meet that commitment is to build relationships with community organizations that are serving the same populations, especially in underserved communities. And you can see that these really align with their values and that the commitments and the priorities enable the organization to move closer toward achieving that big, bold vision. And then finally, here's their belief message. At the Bay Area Discovery Museum, we believe that children grow and thrive through joyful play. So every day we create learning experiences that inspire a lifelong passion for discovery in every child and connect them with the people in the world around them. Because play is essential to children's well-being. And when children and families thrive, our communities thrive.
All right, and our third case study is for an independent school. It's called Stern School, and they serve students in grades 4 through 12. And to use their words of how they describe who they serve, it would have been at the time students with mild to moderate learning disabilities or differences. Stern had acquired a new building and they wanted a strategic plan that was going to help them envision how their program could really take flight in that new space. Again, as I'm walking through this case study, any questions that you have or comments or things that you see we want to point out, drop them in the chat. So our community engagement at Mission Minded is a big part of our strategic planning. I mentioned earlier, many months of work goes in before we can crystallize a vision statement and a brand positioning. And in this case, in all cases, it's really designed to inspire the stakeholders of that organization to imagine the world that they hope their organization is going to bring about. So with Stern, what kind of world did that community really hope they could bring about with their work? It wasn't just about what could Stern become in the future, a better version of itself, but it was more focused on the future and the world. So we work really closely with their community and their leadership and developed what we think is one of the boldest and most goosebump giving, raising vision statements that we've ever had the pleasure of co-creating. And it is, we envision a world where every person has a learning profile. Just want you to think about that for a minute. They serve students who feel like they're the only people who have learning profiles, and everyone else who goes to other schools doesn't have a learning profile. And we all know that's not true. We all have one. Every person on this webinar has a learning profile. And they wanted to envision a world where that was a well-known fact and where people who had diagnosed learning differences and disabilities weren't stigmatized for them. such an inspiring place to be and to think and shoot for. And it really helped them imagine a brand positioning that was very closely tied to that and the kind of school that they needed to be. So their brand positioning was really about shifting perceptions of the school from that special needs school, as I mentioned, the way that they formally describe themselves, to an authoritative leader in defining that educational excellence and student support go hand in hand. You can't have educational excellence unless a school has great support for its students. And they became their brand positioning was around being a thought leader behind that idea. The way that they articulated their values at Stern: start with strengths. Every student has strengths. And so when you know what those are and you leverage those and you build on them as a learner, that's the path to success. So that was the first value at the top of their list. Bring joy to learning, learn from everyone's uniqueness, honor the educator, and never give up. And you can see how those feel very unique to the school that I just described to you. You wouldn't necessarily think that those values work for many schools, but for this one, they were absolutely powerful. And again, expressed in those active phrases. Here's the strategic commitments that cemented their reputation as a West Coast thought leader for neurodiverse education. There's one about empowering educators near and far with curriculum and training to teach to the strengths of all learning profiles. So Stern didn't want to just start with strengths in their school. They wanted to crystallize what it was that they were doing and share that pedagogy with other schools, because every person has a learning profile. That means every school and every teacher needs to know how to teach to strengths of every learner. So this plan came to life, of course, in their new building, but more importantly, it really inspired their entire community to understand the role that Stern could play in bringing about societal change, both destigmatizing learning differences, but also empowering teachers all over the country or world potentially to teach to strengths. You'll recall that Stern School had a brand value that was honor the educator, and there's a priority under one of these commitments that ensures that the school creates a compensation package that surpasses the industry benchmark, because their teachers are incredible, and to honor them tied to their brand, they wanted to have a strategic commitment that was about surpassing industry benchmarks. And then similarly, they have a priority in their strategic plan to uphold their unique brand of diversity and recommit to serving every member of their community. You'll recall that this priority links to their brand value of learn from everyone's uniqueness. And so they really wanted to hone in and understand what diversity meant at their school. It may mean something a little bit different than at other schools. And then here's that external brand signal, that belief message that everyone in the community knows and uses to describe when somebody says, hey, tell me about Stern School. How would you describe it? They would say, you know, at Stern, we know there simply is not a one-size-fits-all educational approach in a world where everyone's learning profile is unique. So you're seeing their vision is right there in their belief statement at the beginning of their elevator pitch message. So every day we teach students how to unlock the learning style that works best for them. You're seeing that start with strengths value reflected in that statement. And we do this because we believe that when support is a part of and not an exception to the school day, kids can focus on being kids while also becoming confident and capable learners. And so you see their brand positioning is articulated in that message. So that concludes our 3 case studies. Carrie's now going to talk you through a couple of exercises that we've developed for you. We'd love you to do in session while we have our time together and while we're here to maybe see some of your work. Carrie, over to you.
Great. Yeah, so we've developed a few exercises for you to practice what we've just shared. 2 that we're going to do right now during this webinar, and 2 that we're going to teach and suggest that you do and complete after this session. And if you'd like to share your work with us after the webinar, we would be delighted to review it and offer some feedback, and we'll share how you can do that later in this session. So here is the first exercise. We'd like you to complete both of these statements on behalf of your organization or your school. So for vision, it has to be broad enough. Remember, vision is sort of that North Star. And it has to be something that's far, far off in the distance, but not so far away from what your organization does. So, for example, if you work in healthcare, while envisioning world peace is a noble idea, it's too far away from the work that you do. So instead, we want you to use this language as a framework and write something like, we envision a world where health equity has been achieved. And your organization might already have a vision statement, but if it isn't expressed using this framework, try rewriting it. And then move on to the brand positioning, which, remember, has to be authentic to you. It has to be distinctive from your competitors, and it should really relate back to that vision statement that you just drafted. And we also want to acknowledge that this is not an easy exercise. When we partner with our clients, it takes months of research and interviews and community engagement. So this does not have to be perfect, but we want you to start to stretch your thinking. So we're going to give you about 5 minutes. And when you're finished, feel free to drop your vision and brand positioning and statements into the chat, and we'll see what you've developed. Okay, 5 minutes on the clock.
Oh, I see we already have one, Carrie.
That's a good one. Great.
In the world. Maybe drop your organization's name, just in case it gives us a little more clarity. I imagine, Anna, you're a school. We envision a world where all children celebrate themselves as capable learners. Howard School. Nice. Carrie and I are going to offer this at the end, but just in case it helps you to know, if you don't get these in the chat now, we'd love to look at them after the session. So we're going to make it possible for you to share these with us after the session. And we'd be happy to offer some feedback or input on them if you decide you want to share them with us after.
Yeah, it's not an easy assignment. Let's take about 1 more minute. Okay, anyone else have one that they drafted that they want to drop in the chat? We have some great examples in there right now, but please feel free to add others as you complete your drafts. That's beautiful. Great vision statement.
Wow.
It's really proud of
I want to hear more about that organization.
you. Great, thanks, Lori.
Lori, I'll give you some running commentaries. If you can make this not about your school, but leave that to your mission to be the school that you describe. So really just make your vision about the world that you imagine, and then your mission will be the answer to that. We didn't actually teach mission today, but maybe that vision could be, we imagine a world where students are globally competent and responsible, citizens of their world. And then you can make your mission more about being that school where they're raised with best practices, or whatever it is that you do to bring about that vision. So offer that as since you are popping in right before we move to the next slide. Thanks for doing that exercise. All right, I'm going to move us along. Now, this exercise is going to be one that you're going to do afterwards. We'll just call it an assignment, if you will. And again, we'd love to see your work. If you want to share this with us after, we're going to be sending you a follow-up email, and you can enter your work in your response to that. But we want you to take a crack at articulating your values in active language. So if you haven't already done so as an organization, you may already have values, but they may not be expressed in active language. So they may be singular phrases like community or innovation, for example. So for organizations who already have those, translate those into active phrases, and ones that are right for your community. Build may not be right. It might be about engage with or embrace community or something to that effect. So look for the right active verb as well. If your organization doesn't have values, consider defining them, leading your organization in an exercise where you go through this and define the most important guiding principles of your organization, narrow them down to 3 or 4 or 5, and then articulate them using that active language. So great assignment or initiative for you and your community to do together if you don't have those already.
Yeah, and we have a question in the chat, which is a good one. And it's, why should the vision be about the world versus one's community or something closer to home? And so how about I start that, and then Romayne can layer on. So, the vision is really meant to be the far off North Star. I don't necessarily think it has to be about the world, but it has to be something that's going to take your organization a long time to achieve. It's not going to be done in 1 year or 10 years, or maybe not even 50 years. But the mission is really where you talk about the work. It's much closer in. So that could be about your community. That could be, again, much closer to your dailiness.
Yeah, and right. And I think sometimes we refer to the world as, or we think of it as the big goal. It's that audacious goal, but really what you wish for the world starts in your community. So with We Don't Waste, for example, while that was stated in a We Envision a World Where, their work is very much focused on Colorado and in the communities that they serve. So that could have just as easily been We Envision a Colorado Where, whatever the rest of those words were, rather than world, or even a smaller subset of Colorado or community area. That said, depending on what your organization does, if you limit yourself to too small of a geography, then perhaps that limits your ability to think bigger, to collaborate with other partners, to think of yourselves as a thought leader in your sector, because you've really narrowed in. So I think you need to find the right balance for your organization, keeping in mind, what you do want to be aspirational. You do want to strive for something a little bit bigger than what you're doing to inspire your stakeholders. Hopefully that helps, Piper. Yes, the video will be available to you. Sorry that you have to leave, Deborah. Thanks for joining us.
So here's another exercise that you can do on your own after the session. If your organization already has a strategic plan, ask yourself if the commitments are a natural outgrowth of the vision, the brand positioning, and the values from the previous exercises that we've just done together. Are all of those elements connected and aligned? If they are, yay, hooray for you. If they're not, think about restating them so that they more closely reflect who you are and where you're going. And we will give bonus points to anyone who starts their commitments with "we commit to."
All right, and this is the next exercise we're actually going to do in session. Piper, I'm going to get back to your question. Thanks for asking it. We are teaching how to do a belief message for your organization. So we're going to do this exercise right now, and it's a real simple exercise that allows you to write a belief message that we hope will engage and leave all of your audiences interested and informed and eager to know just enough. Well, they know just enough about your organization, but eager to know more. So it starts with you filling in the answers on this little Mad Lib. Hopefully you all remember doing Mad Libs back in the day. And it is at blank. So your organization's name, we believe. And then what goes in here is a deeply, deeply held value. The one thing that everyone in your community is a guiding principle and believes and deeply hopes comes about. So every day we do this thing. So verb and object, and for whom. So who do we serve? What is a constituent? If you're a school, obviously that might be for young people, or if you're a girls' school, it might be for girls and young women. If you are a nonprofit organization that serves a particular region, you might say for the people of this area. And then you end that statement with either a problem or a solution or opportunity. So problem would be, because we do this, if we didn't do this, this might happen. Or when we do, this great thing happens. So take a look at this, is how it would be broken down once you've written your message. It has basically 3 parts to it. It's we believe, at our organization, we believe, so we do. And because if we don't, there's a problem, or if we do, when we do, something great happens. I'm just going to pop up the Stern School one now that you've seen how that Mad Lib works, and remind you that theirs was in 3 parts. At Stern School, we know there simply is not a one-size-fits-all educational approach. So that's the we believe. And then the what we do was we teach students how to unlock the learning style that works best for them. And the because when we do, this great thing happens, kids can focus on being kids while also becoming confident, capable learners. So in the next couple of minutes, we would love it if you would just take a crack at doing this for your organization, starting with your name of your organization, your most deeply held value, what you believe, what you do every day, and what's the why. I think, Anna, this is what you're asking for. We're reprising the slide with the Mad Lib. So here, yeah, you have it there. We're just going to give you a couple minutes to get started on this. Please know this takes us at Mission Minded weeks to write the perfect belief message. If you're a mission-minded client and you already have a belief message and you want to drop it in the chat for others to see and admire, go for it. There's a question, could you do this belief message for each value? We don't actually recommend that you have multiple. So it's the process is, what are our values? And then what's the one big idea that our organization really, really cares about? And if you can prioritize your values, or if all of your values sort of ladder up to one bigger idea, That's what you want to agree on for this opening sentence. You really don't want to have 5 different belief messages, one for each. I see a couple in here. Oh, I recognize this one. The world has changed and it's time for education to catch up. That's why every day it's the students at La Scuola who ask the provocative questions. They lead and embrace their own ability to learn across lines of topic, culture, and language. Because when children are open to the world and protagonists in their own education, there's no limit to their ability to learn, find beauty in life, and discover extraordinary answers. Thanks for sharing that, Robin. For Doers and Givers, International Order of the King's Daughters and Sons is a Christian service organization that best delivers on making interdenominational connections while doing good works. That is quite an acronym you have there, Michael. IOKDS. I bet you all struggle with that one. Thank you for sharing. And Sally, thank you at Island Conservation. We believe that island ecosystems should be thriving. So every day we restore islands for wildlife, oceans, and people. Wonderful. All right, we want you to keep playing with those. Please send them to us in the email that you receive. We have one last thing we want to make sure we get to. So we don't want to cut this particular exercise short because it's very important. But let's jump into a quick example of bringing it all together. Carrie, you want to take us through that?
I do, and it's because you've been such great participants. We have one final fun activity that pulls it all together. We're going to share a video we developed for one of our school clients to socialize their strategic plan with their community. And the strategic plan and the brand strategy were developed in an integrated way. When you're watching this video, we want you to see what evidence you see that those two pieces, the strategic plan and the brand strategy, are working together. So we want you to make note of all of the statements that start with we envision, we value, we believe, we commit to, we will so that we can, and then any visual brand signals that you see. So when you hear or you see something that feels like a strategic plan and brand connection, feel free to pop it in the chat.
And I'm going to suggest we
empathetic. You have to envision what someone else's life is, their daily routine. You have to imagine what it's like for them. You can't have any justice if you're not taking into consideration everyone's point of view. In the end, if the world's dying in front of us, it's not going to matter what your political party is, because Mother Nature should be our priority. Make sure people know that they don't have to help in just giant ways. Little steps also help. We really value every voice, no matter what race, gender. The first steps that we have to make is combating sexism and racism and homophobia that dehumanize some human beings. Our generation is the generation that needs to solve climate change. Because
MCDS students have a lot to say about the world and the challenges we face. And it's a testament to the strength of our academic program that our students not only have thoughts on topics like climate change and social justice, but they also understand and believe they can impact these issues at MCDS and beyond. For the past year, we have been developing a new strategic plan that imagines how we can leverage and strengthen the outstanding academic experience at MCDS to chart our students and our school's future.
A strategic plan really sets the vision and priorities for the next 5 or 6 years.
It will help us remain focused, engaged, and will help us understand the actions and steps that we must take to fulfill our goals.
The strategic planning process really allowed us to envision the future we want, not just for our school, but for the world. And then to get clear about what we see as MCDS's role in helping achieve that world and preparing our students with the academic experience to make that possible.
A pretty typical strategic plan would be around functional areas. We're going to do this on the facilities. These are our fundraising priorities. These are our curriculum priorities. Of course, all of that's important and needs to be part of it, but we wanted a more aspirational, visionary plan that actually started with the outcomes that we wanted.
I'm so excited to share our school's new strategic plan, Forge the Path Forward. Our new strategic plan will empower our students with the education, tools, skills, and optimism to be the change makers our world needs. To reach these goals, we've made 4 overarching strategic commitments. Our first commitment is to foster a love of learning that drives intellectual curiosity and academic excellence. We will define a philosophy and articulate a curriculum that emphasizes the development of skills like intellectual agility, design thinking, and growth mindset. And
Okay, we'll stop right there. So we showed this quote earlier in the presentation, but we hope that it feels more resonant now that you see how powerful it can be when you deliver consistent signals to your community through your strategic plan and your brand. And so we really hope that you understand the value and the impact of linking your strategic plan and your brand strategy together. And what are you going to do differently? Whether or not it's feasible for your organization to engage in planning efforts, there are some steps you can take right now. So align your vision and your brand positioning. Ensure that your vision for the future and your unique contribution to fulfilling that vision are aligned. Align and activate your values. Remember that your values are the glue between your strategic plan and your brand strategy. So it's so important to make sure that they're deeply connected to both and that they're active and inviting. Make sure that your organization's commitments or your goals are a reflection of who you are as an organization and where you want to go in the future. And then align a single-minded belief message with the vision, commitments, and values. Write a belief message that passionately reflects the work that you do.
Thanks, Carrie. So I mentioned earlier, if you're attending this session, you're going to receive an email afterwards that provides you with a link where you can download the presentation. Feel free to share it with colleagues. Also a link to rewatch or share the actual video of the webinar, and then a way to sign up for a free consultation. If you are interested in having me or Carrie look at any of your ideas or your drafts, we'd be happy to do that. So just respond to that Google form and sign up for that, and we'd be happy to chat with you. I see a question in here. Actually, there's a couple questions, and I just want to honor that we are at time, but Carrie and I are available to stick around. So anybody wants to stay on with a couple questions. Thank you, Diane, for that. I know Piper has a question that we didn't get to yet, so please stick around. But we would love to chat with you further. So again, any questions that you have or want to spend additional time, reach out to us via the email that you're going to receive. And thank you for being with us today. It's been our pleasure. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Edie. All right, I'm going to get to Piper's question because I know she is sticking around. Let me go back to it. So I think you were asking, Piper, about how to pull from the first 2 exercises in order to draft values. So your values, I'm assuming that your organization doesn't have a set of values today. If you do, you're at least in a good position that you have a starting point. Many times we work with organizations and they have a set of values or, 3 or 4 words that have kind of been bandied about or used throughout the organization's history. If you absolutely do not have that, a great exercise to do is, get all of your organization leadership in a room together and ask yourselves the questions, what are our most important things? What are the deal breakers, the guiding principles that we as a community share, that we wouldn't be a part of this organization if it didn't believe in, if it didn't value, that we would leave if it wasn't important. And you might come up with a list of 40 things, which is not, it's a great starting point, but it's not a good ending point. So from your exercise with your communities, try to cull that down. Maybe there's some overlap between some of the ideas. But really just keep looking for the most important things. What can we take from this list? What can we take from this list? Or what things are sort of sub ideas of others? So that's really the way that we do the exercise is what are the most important values of this community? We hear them a lot when we interview people with our clients. We ask that question straight up and we hear right back. These are the 3 things we care about the most. So you did ask specifically, how do you get them from your vision and from your brand positioning? And I would suggest those things could all happen together. You develop all 3 of them in conjunction with each other. One doesn't necessarily spring from the other, but those are things that you would develop alongside one another. All right. Any other questions that are popping in?
Yeah, I just put in a note in the chat that if anyone has stayed on and we didn't get to their question, just to invite them to repost it in the chat.
Great. I see we have about 15 people still with us. So have we missed any questions?
Not seeing any on my end.
Does the belief message equate to an elevator pitch? Diane, if you're still here, absolutely. It's actually, that's mission-minded jargon for the message that you say to somebody if you only have a very, very short, minute or 2 riding an elevator. So yes, that's another way of describing a belief message. All right. Well, I don't see any new questions coming in. So I think we're going to call it. For those of you still with us, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Carrie, thanks for co-presenting. It was fun to be with you. Frida, thanks for manning the phones. Thanks, Kim. Great to be with you today. Have a